Sarah delved deeper into the past, her heart heavy with the weight of the secrets the lighthouse held. She had expected to uncover a tragic story, a tale of a group of young people who had met their end in a freak accident, but what she discovered was far more sinister. The lighthouse keeper, the man who had been responsible for the safety of those young souls, was not a victim but a perpetrator. His past, shrouded in a veil of mystery, now stood revealed, a grotesque tapestry of deceit and revenge. It started with a faded photograph, a faded memory, a faded love. Sarah unearthed the story of the lighthouse keeper's obsession with one of the young women who had worked at the lighthouse, his love bordering on madness. She learned that he was a man who had been deeply affected by the loss of his own family, a tragic event that had left him broken and vulnerable. The tragedy at the lighthouse, Sarah discovered, had been no accident but a deliberate act, a twisted attempt to possess the love he had lost, to create a tragedy that would mirror his own pain. The lighthouse keeper, driven by a fractured mind and fueled by a twisted sense of justice, had deliberately orchestrated the events that led to the deaths of the young people. Sarah found records of strange occurrences, inexplicable accidents, and a series of near misses that were all too convenient to be mere coincidence. The lighthouse, once a beacon of hope, had become a prison of his obsession, a stage for his twisted plan. His motive, however, remained unclear. Was it a desperate attempt to bring back the love he had lost, to recreate the family he had so tragically been denied? Or was it a sinister desire for revenge to punish the world for the pain he had endured? Sarah found herself grappling with this conundrum, trying to understand the dark recesses of his mind. Was he a broken man consumed by grief, or a calculating monster seeking to inflict his pain on others? Sarah discovered that the lighthouse keeper had meticulously kept records of the events leading up to the tragedy. He had meticulously documented his plan, his thoughts, his emotions, and his obsession. These records, however, were not mere diaries, but a twisted chronicle, a testament to his fractured mind and his thirst for vengeance. The records revealed a man who had meticulously planned the events that led to the deaths of the young people, manipulating circumstances, playing with fate, and orchestrating a tragedy that would be remembered for generations to come. He had chosen the victims, he had planned the time, and he had orchestrated the fatal event. Sarah delved further into his past, meticulously piecing together the fragmented puzzle of his life. She discovered his history, his family, his love, his loss. She uncovered the events that had shattered his world, the tragedy that had left him broken and consumed by darkness. Each discovery was a step closer to understanding his twisted mind, a closer look into the heart of a man who had been consumed by vengeance. The lighthouse keeper's obsession had consumed him, driving him to seek solace in the darkness. He had believed that by creating a tragedy that mirrored his own loss, he could find a sense of closure, a sense of justice. However, his actions had not brought him peace, but a deeper darkness, a relentless craving for revenge that had manifested itself in the 7-day killer. Sarah realized that the lighthouse keeper was not merely a perpetrator of a past tragedy, but a living embodiment of the darkness that haunted the city. The murders were not random acts of violence, but a carefully planned game, a perverse reflection of the tragedy he had orchestrated years ago. The killer, Sarah now understood, was seeking to punish those who had been connected to the lighthouse, those who had been involved in the tragedy, those who had been witnesses to his obsession. Each murder was a meticulously planned act of vengeance, a twisted attempt to right the wrongs he believed had been committed against him. The lighthouse, once a beacon of hope, had become a symbol of his obsession, a monument to his pain, and a stage for his twisted game. It stood as a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface, a testament to the power of obsession and the destructive nature of revenge. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, the weight of her discovery settling like a leaden cloak. The lighthouse keeper, the man who had always seemed so harmless, so devoted to his duties, was a monster. He had not been a victim of the lighthouse tragedy, but a perpetrator. He had deliberately caused the accident, fueled by a twisted desire for revenge, a twisted form of love. The truth had been buried for years, hidden beneath a veil of whispers and speculation. The keeper had been a master of deception, spinning a tale of grief and loss to conceal his dark secret. He had carefully cultivated an image of a man shattered by tragedy, a man consumed by guilt. But Sarah knew the truth. The keeper had been the architect of their demise. The accident at the lighthouse, a seemingly random event, had been meticulously orchestrated. Sarah had unearthed a trail of whispers, faint echoes of a love scorned, a desperate attempt to reclaim what had been lost. The keeper had been in love with one of the victims, a young woman named Emily, who had been his student, his protégée. Emily, with her bright eyes and infectious laughter, had captivated the lonely lighthouse keeper. He had poured his heart out to her, showering her with attention and affection. But Emily, with her own dreams and aspirations, had been drawn to the vibrant world beyond the lighthouse. Their paths had diverged, and the keeper, consumed by jealousy and rage, had sought to reclaim what he had lost. He had carefully orchestrated the accident, a cruel twist of fate that would forever bind him to Emily, a macabre testament to his love. Sarah had been a puzzle solver, a master of deciphering complex riddles. She had spent countless hours combing through dusty archives, interviewing witnesses, and piecing together the fragmented narratives of the past. Each piece of the puzzle, each seemingly insignificant detail, had revealed a new layer of the keeper's deception. The accident had been a carefully planned act of revenge. Disguised as a tragic accident, the keeper had sabotaged the lighthouse's machinery, ensuring the collapse of the tower, a macabre act of retribution. His motive was clear: to bring Emily back to him, even if it meant bringing her back from the dead. Sarah's discovery had sent chills down her spine, a grim realization of the depths of human depravity. The keeper's motives were both chilling and perplexing. He had not just murdered a few young people. He had sought to rewrite history, to claim them as his own, even after death. As she delved deeper into the keeper's past, Sarah discovered a history of obsession, a relentless pursuit of a love that could never be his. He had been a recluse, a solitary figure who had sought refuge in the lighthouse, a man consumed by his own desires. The tragedy had been his way of escaping his own loneliness, of claiming Emily for eternity. The lighthouse, once a symbol of hope and guidance, had become a monument to the keeper's twisted desires. The walls echoed with the whispers of his obsession, a reminder of the darkness that had lurked beneath the surface. Sarah's revelation had unleashed a storm of emotions, a wave of anger and disgust, but also a profound sadness. She felt a deep empathy for the victims, for the young people who had been so carelessly robbed of their futures. She saw in them a reflection of her own youthful dreams and aspirations, a reminder of the fragility of life. But her empathy did not extend to the keeper. He was a monster, a manipulator who had used love as a weapon, a twisted form of vengeance. He had not only murdered but also robbed the world of the potential of those he had taken. The keeper's actions had a profound impact on the town, casting a shadow over the once peaceful community. The lighthouse, once a symbol of hope and guidance, had become a symbol of fear and dread. The memory of the tragedy lingered, a reminder of the darkness that could lurk beneath the surface. The lighthouse keeper, a man who had seemed so harmless, so devoted to his duties, had been a monster all along. His secret had been a tightly guarded truth, a web of lies and deceit, a testament to the darkest depths of the human psyche. Sarah's investigation had taken her on a harrowing journey into the heart of darkness, a journey that had tested her limits, challenged her belief, and left her forever scarred. She had witnessed the depths of human depravity, the destructive power of obsession, and the enduring impact of the past. But she had also discovered the strength of her own resolve, the power of truth, and the enduring hope that even in the face of darkness, the light could prevail. Sarah found herself amidst a web of secrets, a labyrinth woven from lies and deceit. With each passing day, the pressure mounted. The clock was ticking, and the city held its breath. The police, despite their tireless efforts, seemed to be chasing shadows. Their investigations were leading them in circles, and Sarah realized that the killer was one step ahead. She had to act fast. Time was running out. The killer had a meticulously planned schedule, striking with a chilling predictability. Each murder was a horrific spectacle, a macabre display designed to terrorize the city. Sarah knew she couldn't rely on the police. She had to take matters into her own hands. She had a hunch that the killer was someone she knew, someone she had crossed paths with in the past. The lighthouse, with its dark history and enigmatic keeper, had become a haunting presence in her mind. Sarah recalled the details of the lighthouse tragedy, the chilling tale of young lives lost in a freak accident. The keeper, a man shrouded in mystery, had always been a suspect. Sarah's mind raced. The killer was targeting the lighthouse's former employees, people who had been connected to the tragedy. They were being punished for their perceived role in the events of the past. But why? What was the killer's motive? Was it revenge, or was there something deeper, something more sinister at play? The killer's actions were fueled by a twisted sense of justice, a warped moral code. He believed he was correcting a wrong, ridding the world of those who had wronged him in the past. Sarah couldn't fathom such a twisted mindset, but she knew she had to understand it, to see the world through the killer's eyes. Sarah had to find the killer before he struck again. She had to stop him before another innocent life was taken. But time was against her. The next victim, the one the killer was targeting, was a woman named Mary. Sarah had uncovered a chilling detail. Mary was the last surviving member of the group who had perished in the lighthouse tragedy. She had been a young girl at the time, but the trauma of that day had haunted her ever since. Mary was living a quiet life, oblivious to the danger that lurked in the shadows. Sarah had to warn her, to save her from a fate worse than death. She raced to Mary's apartment, her heart pounding in her chest. She arrived just in time to see a figure lurking in the shadows. The killer was there, waiting to strike. Sarah's instincts took over. She lunged forward, confronting the killer. A tense struggle ensued, a desperate fight for survival. The killer was strong, but Sarah was determined. She fought back with everything she had. Her adrenaline pumping, her mind focused on one goal: to protect Mary and bring the killer to justice. The struggle raged on, a ballet of fear and desperation. The apartment became a battlefield, the shadows dancing around them, mirroring the darkness within the killer's soul. Sarah knew that she was fighting against a formidable adversary, a man consumed by rage and twisted by the events of his past. But she wasn't going to give up. Not now. She had to find a way to stop him, to save Mary, to bring the killer's reign of terror to an end. The fate of the city and the lives of those who remained hung in the balance. Sarah's mind raced, searching for a solution, a way to outwit the killer, to disarm him before he could unleash his deadly fury. She had to think fast, act quickly, and pray that her instincts would lead her to victory. Finally, she saw an opportunity, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. She feigned a weakness, a vulnerability that lured the killer in, giving her the advantage she needed. With a swift move, she disarmed him, her heart pounding as she realized she had a chance to stop him, to save Mary, to bring the nightmare to an end. But the fight was far from over. The killer was still dangerous, still capable of inflicting harm. Sarah knew she had to be cautious, to move carefully, to avoid giving him the opportunity to strike again. She had to find a way to restrain him, to ensure he wouldn't hurt anyone else, to protect Mary from his wrath. The police arrived on the scene, drawn by the commotion. They were ready to arrest the killer, to put an end to his reign of terror. Sarah, her body trembling with exhaustion and relief, stepped back, watching as the officers apprehended the killer. Mary, shaken but safe, stood beside Sarah, her eyes filled with gratitude. She was alive, thanks to Sarah's bravery and quick thinking. The city, once consumed by fear, exhaled a collective sigh of relief. The killer, the one who had haunted their dreams, had been captured. Sarah, however, couldn't shake off the feeling that the darkness had touched her, that the shadows of the lighthouse tragedy lingered within her. She had seen the depths of human depravity, the twisted motives that could drive a man to such horrific acts. She had faced her own fears, her own vulnerabilities, and emerged victorious. But the experience had changed her, leaving her with a newfound appreciation for the fragility of life, the importance of truth and justice, and the enduring power of the human spirit. She knew that the fight wasn't over, that darkness lurked in the shadows, waiting to claim its next victim. She had to be vigilant, to continue her fight for justice, to expose the darkness and bring light to the truth. The city was safe, but the shadows remained. The fight for justice was never truly over. And Sarah, the investigative journalist who had dared to face the darkness, was ready to continue her fight, to expose the secrets hidden beneath the surface and bring light to the shadows that threatened to engulf them all. The rain lashed against the windows of Sarah's apartment, mimicking the relentless pounding of her heart. The scent of coffee, barely discernible amidst the dampness, clung to the air, a bitter reminder of the sleepless night she had spent poring over files, maps, and faded photographs. The clock on her desk ticked, its steady rhythm a stark contrast to the chaos swirling within her mind. It was Wednesday, the day the 7-day killer had chosen to strike again. Sarah had been consumed with the case since the first victim was found, a young woman with a faded picture of a lighthouse clutched in her hand. The murders had occurred on specific days of the week, always at the same time, a macabre ballet of death, choreographed by a killer with a chillingly calculated approach. Sarah had followed the trail of clues like a bloodhound, each step leading her deeper into the labyrinthine recesses of the killer's mind. She had unearthed a shared history between the victims, a connection that was as subtle as it was chilling. They had all worked at a lighthouse in a quaint seaside town decades ago. The lighthouse stood like a silent sentinel, a monument to a tragedy that had unfolded years ago, its secrets buried beneath layers of sand and time. Sarah had visited the town, its salty air tinged with the scent of brine and seaweed, the wind whispering tales of the past. She had interviewed former lighthouse employees, piecing together the story of a group of young people, their lives cut short in a tragic accident, their dreams washed away by the unforgiving sea. There was a darkness surrounding the lighthouse, a palpable sense of unease that clung to its rugged stone walls. It was as if the wind carried whispers of a past that refused to be forgotten. Sarah felt it, a chill running down her spine, a prickling sensation on the back of her neck, a premonition of danger lurking in the shadows. The killer was targeting the victims based on their connection to the lighthouse, each murder a carefully orchestrated act of revenge. Sarah had uncovered the truth. The lighthouse keeper, a man shrouded in mystery and a sinister past, was the perpetrator. He had been in love with one of the victims and had deliberately caused the accident. His motive a twisted, warped form of vengeance. She had pieced together the killer's twisted logic each murder, a symbolic act of retribution for the tragedy that had taken place at the lighthouse. He was systematically targeting those who had been present that fateful day, their lives intertwined with the keeper's dark secret. Now, Sarah was racing against time, a race against the clock, against the killer's relentless pursuit. She had identified the next victim, a woman named Alice, a former lighthouse employee, oblivious to the danger lurking in her path. The killer's next strike would be a masterpiece of macabre, a chilling crescendo in his symphony of death. Alice was an unlikely target, her life seemingly ordinary, her past a blur of memories of a childhood spent in the shadow of the lighthouse. She had been a shy, bookish girl, a stark contrast to the vibrant youth who had once thrived on its rugged shores. But fate had a cruel twist in store for Alice. Her past, like a phantom, reaching out to claim her present. Sarah felt a sense of urgency, a gnawing unease in her gut, a visceral awareness that time was running out. She had to warn Alice, had to save her from the killer's clutches. She knew the killer's methods, the calculated precision with which he operated, the sinister game he was playing. She had a list of potential victims, a macabre checklist that the killer was systematically working his way through. Alice's name was at the top of the list, a stark reminder of the danger she was facing. Sarah had to get to Alice, had to find her before the killer did, but the clock was ticking, each second a countdown to disaster. The city streets were a blur of movement, the rush hour traffic a symphony of honking horns and screeching brakes. Sarah was a lone wolf in a city of millions, a lone warrior against an unseen enemy. She had to make a choice that could mean life or death for Alice. She could call the police, but they were already on the case, their investigation a tangled web of dead ends and false leads. Sarah knew she had to act, had to trust her instincts, had to rely on her own resources. She knew Alice's address, a small apartment in a quiet residential neighborhood, a world away from the bustling city center. She had to find Alice, had to warn her, had to prevent the killer from claiming his next victim. As Sarah drove, the rain beat down on the windshield, blurring the world around her, the city lights reflecting in shimmering pools of water. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, her heart pounding in her chest. The killer was out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for his moment. Sarah thought of Alice, the young woman she had never met, her life about to be turned upside down by the killer's madness. Sarah had to save her, had to break the killer's cycle of violence. She had to make a difference, had to stand against the darkness, to bring the killer to justice. She knew she was walking a tightrope. One wrong step could spell disaster. She was facing a formidable opponent, a killer with a chillingly methodical approach, a master of manipulation, a puppet master pulling the strings of fate. The rain continued to fall, a steady, relentless downpour, mirroring the weight of Sarah's burden. The killer was out there, the clock was ticking, and Sarah had to find Alice before it was too late. She was a lone wolf, a hunter pursuing a prey, a warrior in a silent war against a darkness that threatened to consume them all. The air hung heavy with the stench of salt and decay. Sarah stood at the base of the crumbling lighthouse, its silhouette stark against the stormy sky. The wind whipped around her, tearing at her clothes and whipping her hair across her face. It was almost as if the lighthouse itself was trying to warn her away, but Sarah was determined to face the darkness that lay within its walls. She had come here to confront the killer, to finally understand the twisted mind that had driven him to commit these heinous acts. Her journey had taken her through a labyrinth of secrets, leading her back to this desolate place. She had felt the weight of the town's history pressing down on her, the ghosts of the lighthouse tragedy whispering tales of love, betrayal, and vengeance. The lighthouse was a silent sentinel, its weathered stones bearing the scars of time. The air around it was thick with a chilling energy, a sense of foreboding that made her heart pound in her chest. Sarah knew she was walking into danger, but she had no choice. She had to stop the killer before he could claim another victim. She pushed open the heavy wooden door, feeling a wave of cold air wash over her. The interior of the lighthouse was dark and dusty, the only light coming from the faint glow of the storm outside. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and sea salt, a grim reminder of the tragedy that had transpired within these walls. Sarah's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing a staircase that spiraled upwards, leading to the lighthouse's lamp room. Each step creaked ominously, each echo in the vast space adding to the unnerving atmosphere. She gripped the handrail tightly, her heart pounding against her ribs. As she climbed, she could hear the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks below, a constant reminder of the turbulent forces at play. She knew the killer was somewhere within these walls, his presence a palpable weight that pressed down on her. Reaching the top, Sarah stepped into the lamp room. The room was vast, the walls lined with antique navigation equipment and maps. It was a space where the past and the present collided. A sense of unease settled upon Sarah. It felt as if the lighthouse's very bones held the echoes of the past, the whispers of those who had walked these floors before her. She turned her flashlight beam across the room, sweeping it over the shelves and equipment. Then, her gaze fell on a figure standing in the shadows. The killer. The figure turned, his face obscured by the darkness. Sarah froze, her breath catching in her throat. Her mind raced as she tried to recall the face she had seen in the shadows of her dreams. Sarah. The killer's voice was a rasp, a cold whisper that seemed to slither through the air. "I've been waiting for you." Sarah's hands trembled. She gripped her flashlight tighter, as if it could offer some kind of protection against the darkness that surrounded her. She couldn't let fear paralyze her. She had to act, to protect the innocent. "I know what you've done," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "And I'm going to stop you." The killer laughed, a dry, crackling sound that echoed through the room. "You think you can stop me? I've been planning this for years. Nothing can stop me now." Sarah could feel her heart pounding, a frantic rhythm that mirrored the crashing of the waves against the lighthouse's foundations. She had to think fast, to find a way to outsmart the killer, to escape the clutches of this darkness. "Why?" Sarah pressed. "Why are you doing this? Why are you killing them? What did they ever do to you?" The killer stepped into the light, and Sarah gasped in horror. His face was pale, drawn, his eyes burning with a cold, almost predatory fire. He was younger than she had imagined, his features sharp, his hair dark and unruly. "They took everything from me," he said, his voice a rasp. "They took my love, my life, my happiness, and now I will make them pay." Sarah's mind whirled, trying to connect the pieces. He was talking about the lighthouse tragedy. He must have been one of the young people, the one who had been consumed by grief and rage. But who was he, and how had he survived that night? "Tell me their names," Sarah commanded, her voice trembling but firm. "Tell me who you are." The killer laughed, a sound that was chillingly familiar. "Oh, you know their names, Sarah. You've been playing my game all along. It's been your game, too. The truth was right there in front of you." He paused, his gaze piercing Sarah's, his voice dripping with malice. "And now you'll learn the truth about me." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. He was right. She had been close, but she had missed the obvious. The killer was a ghost from the past, his motives driven by the tragedy at the lighthouse. She just had to figure out who he was and connect him to the victims. The killer moved closer, his eyes burning with a cold intensity. "You see, Sarah," he whispered, his voice a low growl. "I'm not just a killer. I am vengeance. I am the ghost of the lighthouse, and you can't stop me. He lunged at her, a blur of motion in the shadows. Sarah screamed, scrambling back. She fumbled for her flashlight, her fingers trembling with fear. She aimed a light at the killer, desperate to buy herself some time. But it was no use. The killer was too fast, too strong. He grabbed her wrist, his grip like a vise. "It's over, Sarah," he snarled, his breath hot against her ear. "You can't escape me." Sarah struggled against his grip, but it was useless. He was powerful, driven by years of pent-up rage. He dragged her towards a hidden door, the door she had missed, a secret passage that had remained hidden beneath the layers of dust and grime. "This is where it ends," he whispered, his voice a deathly rasp. "This is where you die." As the killer pushed Sarah through the door, a cold, clammy feeling enveloped her. She was trapped, alone, with a madman who was obsessed with vengeance. Sarah knew she was in a desperate situation. She had to fight back, to find a way to escape, to survive. But as she gazed into the killer's eyes, she saw a darkness so profound, a hatred so fierce, that she knew she had to be willing to do whatever it took to survive. Sarah's thoughts raced as she was dragged deeper into the lighthouse's bowels. She had to figure out a way to escape, to outsmart the killer. The weight of the lighthouse, the darkness of its history, seemed to be closing in on her, but Sarah was determined to fight her way out. She was a journalist, a fighter, and she was not going to let this killer win. She would use her wit, her courage, and her knowledge of the killer's obsession to turn the tables. She would escape, and she would find a way to stop this madness before it was too late.